If you work with other people, disagreements are just part of the deal, right? It's a simple fact of life. But how we understand and manage these moments, well, that can make all the difference between a team that's thriving and an environment that's just plain toxic. And if you feel like you're dealing with conflict a lot, trust me, you are not alone. So if conflict feels really common, that's because it absolutely is. Get this, a staggering 85% of employees say they experience conflict at work. But here's the thing, that's not necessarily a sign of failure. It's often a sign that you're part of an active, engaged team where people genuinely care. The real question isn't if it will happen, but what we do when it does. I love this quote from helpguide.org because it really sets the stage perfectly. The goal isn't to get rid of conflict. That's impossible. The goal is to get better at navigating it. Because when we handle disagreements in a respectful, positive way, we actually end up building more trust and making our teams even stronger. So, to get a handle on this, here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about why conflict is normal. Then, we'll learn how to diagnose the 4 main types. We'll dig into the huge difference between productive and personal clashes, see how small things can spiral, and then look at the real costs to a business before we wrap it all up with some key takeaways for you. All right, let's dive right in with the most important idea to get our heads around. Conflict isn't just normal, it is absolutely inevitable. Think about it. We bring all these different people together, different backgrounds, different ways of working, different values, different ideas, and we ask them to collaborate and solve really complex problems. Disagreement isn't just likely, it's actually a necessary ingredient in that whole process. The real shift happens when we start seeing conflict as an opportunity for creativity instead of just a problem. Okay, so we've established that conflict is going to happen. Now what? Well, the first and most crucial step is to diagnose what kind of disagreement you're actually in, because how you resolve it really depends on where it's coming from. And generally, workplace conflicts fall into one of 4 core types. First on our list is task conflict. This is all about the work itself, the nuts and bolts. It's debating the best strategy, or arguing over how to use resources, or hashing out what the project goals should be. It's a conflict of ideas, and it's focused entirely on the what. Next up, we have interpersonal conflict. And this one's personal. It's what we usually call a personality clash. It's rooted in different communication styles, emotional reactions, just friction between people. The focus here shifts away from the work and onto the who. It feels a lot less like a debate and a lot more like a battle. Our third type is role conflict. This one pops up when there's confusion over who's supposed to do what. Maybe you feel like you're shouldering an unfair amount of the work, or your duties are overlapping with the coworkers, and it's causing chaos. It's all about the how the work is divided and defined. And finally, we have what is often the most challenging type, value conflict. These disagreements are deep. They come from our core beliefs, our morals, our ethics. It could be a clash between your personal values and a company policy, for example. This conflict is all about the fundamental why that drives everything we do. Now, out of those 4 types, there's one distinction that is absolutely critical for any team to get right. And that's the difference between task conflict and interpersonal conflict. Because one can be a super powerful engine for growth, while the other is almost always destructive. It all boils down to one thing: focus. A healthy task conflict is all about being collaborative. It's you and me versus the problem. This is what sparks innovation, what leads to better decisions. But interpersonal conflict, that's adversarial. It becomes you versus me. The focus shifts from the problem to attacking the person, and that just destroys trust and creates a toxic culture. All right, let's make this real with a quick scenario. So you've got the sales and IT departments clashing over a new system. Sales needs it to be super user-friendly, right? But IT is focused on making sure it's technically sound and efficient. Both sides have valid points. This is a perfect example of a task conflict. The disagreement is about what the system should be. And here is the crucial turning point. Task conflict is only productive as long as it's handled respectfully. The second a debate about ideas becomes a personal attack, the difference between saying, "I'm not sure that idea will work," versus "your ideas are always terrible," that's when it transforms. That healthy disagreement just curdles into a destructive personal fight. Okay, now let's look at another one. Here we have Jack and Linda. They're not really disagreeing about a specific task, are they? They're disagreeing about each other's fundamental style. The friction is a classic personality clash. And notice how they're blaming each other personally. This is a clear-cut interpersonal conflict. So what happens when these things aren't handled well? Well, they don't just simmer, they boil over. There's a pretty predictable pattern for how small disagreements can spiral into huge blowups. It's often called the conflict escalation ladder. You know, it almost always starts small at step 1 with just a minor disagreement. But if it's not resolved, it climbs to step 2, personalization. Now, it's not about the idea anymore, it's about you. From there, dialogue breaks down. People get defensive, they start avoiding each other. Then we hit step 4, where enemy images start to form. It becomes an us versus them battle. And finally, you reach the top, open hostility, where all collaboration just stops and the damage is out there for everyone to see. And that kind of damage, it doesn't just stay contained between two people. Oh no, it sends these ripples out across the entire organization. And those ripples come with some very real and very high costs. And when you actually look at the numbers, the impact becomes crystal clear. The single biggest cost is productivity loss. People are spending time and energy on disputes instead of their actual work. Right behind that is employee turnover, because great people will leave toxic environments. Then you have the damage to the overall culture, which just erodes trust. And in the worst cases, it can even lead to legal issues from things like harassment claims. Okay, so after hearing all that, you might be wondering, what can I actually do about this? Well, this final section is all about what we can do, reflecting on what we've learned and pulling out the key takeaways you can start using today. Let's bring this home for a second. I want you to just take a moment and think about a recent disagreement you either had or you saw at work. Using what we just talked about, was it really about the task, or had it already tipped over into being personal? Just being able to identify the type is a huge first step toward handling it better next time. All right, let's wrap this up with the key things to remember. First, and most importantly, just accept that conflict is normal. It's going to happen. From there, your first job is to diagnose the type. Always guard that line between a healthy debate about the task and a destructive personal attack. If you see those warning signs of escalation, step in early. Because at the end of the day, managing conflict well is a responsibility we all share, and it's what makes our teams truly strong. And that really leaves us with one final powerful question to think about. The next time you find yourself in a disagreement about the work, I want you to ask yourself this. Instead of shying away from it, how can you lean into that tension in a productive way? How can you make sure it stays focused on the problem, not the person, and use it as a real opportunity to innovate, to learn, and to build something better together?